Oh, he looks so young.
And good morning, everybody, and welcome.
I was watching it.
Yeah, okay.
We'll get started here in just a second. Please take a seat. My name is Carter Patterson. I am the incoming president of the Lanier Forsyth Rotary Club, and it's always an honor for our Rotary Club to partner with the Chamber of Commerce on events such as today. And the post-legislative session is always one of my favorite events of the year because we've got a really good delegation here and some really good people that put a lot of time into making our community better. If you're looking for a service organization, I know almost everybody in this room is probably Rotarian in one of the clubs, but if you're not, tap one of us on the shoulder and come join us. We meet, the Lanier Forsyth Club meets on Tuesday mornings at the hospital, and we do a lot of good things at our club, as do all the other Rotary clubs. So with that, if you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd now like to hand off to my good friend and board chair of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Derek Brooks.
Y'all hear me?
Is it gonna work?
Bear with me while I get dressed. All right, can y'all hear me okay? So thank you, Carter. It was just a couple years ago, somebody was introducing Carter up here, so I appreciate you paving the road for me, Carter. Thank you to the Lanier Forsyth Rotary Club, my Rotary Club. I appreciate y'all partnering with us on this event today. If you don't know me, I'm Derek Brooks. I'm the board chair of the Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce. And the chamber staff may not have attended the last time I led a panel discussion, or they probably wouldn't have had me back up here today. So anyhow, maybe we'll have some fun today. Thank you all for coming to the post-legislative breakfast. We're excited to be back here at Sawney hosting this. And we'd like to thank Blake House, and I want to introduce him. He's the Vice President of Member Services at Sawney EMC. Blake, come on up and tell us. I know you're in here. There he is. Come on up and tell us a thing or two.
I'll be extremely brief. It is very nice to have this room full again. It's been 2 years, over 2 years, since we hosted this group. On behalf of the board and the staff, we do appreciate you coming to be with us. We appreciate your welcoming the legislators here with us this morning. We're anxious to hear what you think the status of our county and our country is. And we ask that everyone say a prayer for our country. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Blake. All right, before we get started with this program, I want to share some pretty cool successes we've had at the Chamber this year. So since January, the Forsyth team, our economic development engine, has announced 14 new project wins totaling 252 announced new jobs and over 138 million in announced new capital investment. We're on track for another record-breaking year this year, which is awesome. The Chamber's Workforce Development Initiative, FOCO Works, is making big strides in connecting our employers with local talent pipelines. In fact, we've just completed a program called Launch last week. It's a career-ready training program for recent high school graduates who are looking to enter the workforce in Forsyth County's target industry sectors. I attended that event and it was amazing. It culminated in a big job fair, and I don't know the numbers, like if ever all those kids got hired or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. They were fantastic. The Chamber partnerships with Forsyth County schools, and we created a role to help facilitate our community's workforce development needs, including creating internship and mentorship opportunities for our students and customized recruitment strategies for our employers. I'm excited to announce that we have officially welcomed our Director of Workforce Development, Brooke Stahl. Where's Brooke at? Give us a wave. Way back in the back. We've been working on getting her here for like 2 years and she didn't even know it. So anyhow, she brings a history of workforce development efforts from the hotel industry here to our community, and we're excited to have her join the team. Your Chamber's also been working hard on the T-Splost initiative. When T-Splost passes in November, it'll generate $52 million a year if we don't even grow, if we stay the same size, dedicated solely to transportation improvements. When we leverage that with state and possibly federal dollars, we'll have the opportunity to transform the face of transportation in Forsyth County. I'm sure our delegation is going to talk about that here shortly. We also welcomed another new staff member at the Chamber, Lyric Smith. Lyric is our Director of Operations and Administration and oversees our Chamber's financial management and operational excellence. And we're excited to have her join the team as well. Where's she at? Lyric, right here. Give us. So the 2022 post-legislative session breakfast offers our business leaders and members of the community access to our elected officials and insights about their time in session this past year. But I'd like to recognize a few of our non-presenting elected officials joining us here today. We've got Board of Commissioners Chairman Alfred John back in the back, Commissioner Cindy Mills right here, Commissioner Laura Simonson also back in the back, Commissioner Todd Levent, and did I miss any? Anybody that, if you want to be elected? Judge Wills, somewhere. He's here. Not elected. Don't judge me, please. All right. So anyhow, hey, thank all y'all for joining us today. I'd like to take a second to thank our supporters for championing today's event. Our breakfast sponsor, AT&T, and our bronze sponsors, University of North Georgia and Jan Rooney with State Farm. Please join me in thanking these organizations that continually facilitate prosperity here. All right, let's get started with the program. I want to extend a personal thank you to our delegation for coming out today. We know your time is very valuable, and we're thankful that you're spending some of it with us. We want to dedicate most of our time to your questions for our delegation, and we've collected a lot of them at the registration process. So I've got those here with me, but we can also, we'll be asking for more questions throughout the program. I'll get to that in a minute. So is the Wi-Fi network is listed on the screen right there. And so we're going to do some polling. So if you would put this information in your phone. So if you will text James McCoy 350 to the number 22333, that'll get you started so that whenever we ask a question, you can answer it and all the results will be up there on the screen. Once this slide goes away, if you decide you want to join and you hadn't, it's on the back of the program, I believe. You can see how to do that. So let's, everybody ready to try this out? Am I going too fast? All right, let's do this. I want to do a fun question. So go ahead and enter into that program. What are your fun summer plans? And let's just see what folks are doing in here today. I'll give you a second for that. World hiking. That's a lot of hiking. Derek, I like Derek. That's going to be fun. Travel, motorcycles, college, summer college. Travel to the beach looks like a lot of folks. I still like Derek. I don't know. So hiking, beach, and travel is definitely, so these are things I should check out. Rocky Mountain Golf. Is golf one thing? Conquer. Okay, this is fun. So that works. So now we know how, that you know how to do it. All right, so now that we're all jealous of each other's fun summer plans, including Derek, let me introduce each of our legislators. You'll see on the screen the areas that they serve in and a few facts about each of them. So we'll begin with Senator Greg Dolezal, and I should point out that Representative Jones wanted me to make sure that y'all knew we're starting here alphabetically. Has nothing to do with the Senate and the House thing. So anyhow, Senator Greg Dolezal is the Vice Chairman of the Science and Technology Committee. The other committees he's a member of are on the screen. It's a lot. Next, we have Representative Sherry Gilligan. Representative Gilligan is on the committees for Budget and Fiscal Affairs Oversight and the Science and Technology. We also have Representative Todd Jones. Representative Jones is the Vice Chairman of the Science and Technology Committee. And also joining us today is Representative Lauren McDonald. Representative McDonald is on the Game, Fish, and Parks Committee, Human Relations and Aging Committee, Natural Resources and Environment Committee. Please join me in thanking our delegation for this. So we're now going to shift to the questions that were submitted via the registration process, and you can also use the QR code on the back of your program or on the screen to submit more questions. If you don't like that and you want to write a question on a piece of paper, raise your hand. Chamber staff member will find you and help you out with that. So for y'all, we're going to take the first two questions, or the first two answers for every question, so that we're not here till lunchtime.
That's good.
Unless Brian wants to keep cooking. I don't know how you work it. Anyhow, but this first one, let's everybody answer this one. So please talk about the specific legislation that you worked on this session that has the greatest impact on the residents of Forsyth County.
It has the greatest impact on
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
First of all, good morning, everyone. As Derek mentioned earlier, it's great to be back among friends. And I think probably my legislation that I want to highlight, the three of us up here worked on together, relates to the fact that we're back and living life in kind of the post-COVID world. We had a number of questions and things around the education space this year and around COVID in particular. And Lauren actually carried a bill in the House that I co-sponsored on the Senate side, and I spoke to on the Senate side. It was the Unmask Our Students Act. And it was one of a number of measures that we had this year just to reaffirm the role of parents in the decision-making process for the students, not only in Forsyth County, but in Georgia. And it was really an example, I think, Lauren and Todd, because Todd spoke to it on the Senate floor as well. Sherry, I'm not sure if you did, but I know Todd and I kind of tag teamed the data side of it, right? Because what's happening right now is we're coming out of COVID and we're saying, okay, how did we respond to COVID? What were the things that we did well? What were the things that we wouldn't want to do again? And certainly one of the things that we're seeing were a lot of the NPIs that we use, the non-pharmaceutical interventions that we used. We know, looking at states that had mandates and did not, a lot of the NPIs that we saw being used in a lot of states other than Georgia, quite frankly, were not effective. And they ended up driving their economy into the ground. So to be in Georgia currently in Forsyth County with 2.6% unemployment, which is a record low in the history of the state. And for those of us that are business owners in the room, we know that we're dealing with the headwind of trying to find talent. I think a lot of what we did around removing the COVID mandates was significant, getting the state back to work was significant, and then ultimately, we'll probably unpack education later, but ensuring that we ensure parents have a seat at the table for what's being taught in the classroom, and ensuring our students are taught not what to think, but they're taught how to think. Because I know that for me as a father, that's what I value most when I send my kids to school in the morning. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and it is wonderful to be back. So one of the pieces of legislation that I worked very hard on was about maternity housing. Here in Forsyth County, I want to thank the commissioners because you went out on a limb with the faith that we would be able to get this legislation passed, and we were able to get it passed. That maternity supportive home actually opens on June 21st. We'll be able to take our first mom in this home. This is a huge impact for all citizens of Forsyth County, even though it's serving moms and their minor children. Because when we get these moms out of a failing situation, they are able to now become productive members of our society. Their children have a better chance of becoming successful adults. This is what we have to do to create that culture of life. And it's something we had to work very, very hard on. It's been a couple of years that we were working on this. So I'm thrilled that we were able to get it through. And again, thank you, commissioners, for going out and allowing the process to go forward, for the home to go ahead and have all of the necessary permits in order to be able to open this June.
Thanks, Sherry. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'll double down on what Greg said regarding unmasking. It was a great coordination effort that he and I had, along with Lauren. He was carrying it for the governor, and we were able to hit the House floor and the Senate floor, I think, with the right data to be able to make sure that we knew that what we were doing was the right thing to do. So from an efficacy standpoint, that bill works really well. Save Girl Sports, I co-sponsored that, and happy, I think everyone up here may have co-sponsored that bill. And we were really happy to get that through. I have a personal thing there. My daughter, who graduated from South about a week and a half ago, she defended her 7A title in pole vault, which I'm very proud of. And
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Yeah. But probably what I'm most proud of the fact is that she beat girls.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to go against an uneven playing field. And I think that was super important. From, I'll say, a sponsorship standpoint, there were 3 bills that went across the line that I was the primary sponsor on. The first one was the misclassification of workers. For those of you who don't know, several of our trades people were having a challenge, HVAC, plumbing, you name it, in terms of their competition was not properly classifying their workers, meaning W-2. They were putting them on as 1099. And I don't need to tell you as business owners what that means in terms of, I'll say, an unfair advantage from a cost perspective. So we were able to get that across the line. We were able to make sure that the DOL has what it needs to enforce that. And I think as a small and medium-sized business owner, that's a bill that has not been picked up by the AJC, by Channel 2, by Channel 46. It should have been, because I think every small and medium-sized business in Forsyth and the state should absolutely appreciate that bill. The second bill that I sponsored was the robot bill. Super excited to actually bring innovation into the state. For those of you who don't know, Chick-fil-A just announced that they will be starting robot delivery and AI. They're starting the testing now. Amazon is, UPS is, Uber Eats, Grubhub, you name it. So you're going to start seeing robots on the sidewalks, the bike paths, multi-use paths, etc. And that's all because of the fact that we got this bill across the line, and excited about that because I do think one of the jobs that government has, besides getting out of your way, is to make sure the pathways exist for innovation. And I think we'll probably revisit that bill. I don't know if it'll be me or not, But we'll revisit that bill probably in 2 years from what we learned from all the different testing from all the different companies doing that. And then finally, there was this little small bill that a few of you may have heard about, the mental health and substance abuse bill. It was a tiny bill, about 75 pages. A lot of misinformation out there, but a lot of good information and way too much to unpack for this morning. If you want to know more detail about that, happy to sit down with you. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank Blake House. Thank you for hosting, letting us use your facility. 3 o'clock came early for me this morning, so I threw on some clothes, threw my wife in a truck, and came across 2 big mountains from Asheville, North Carolina. I was up there for the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores, and some things we'll probably talk about today is big issues that they're having. It was great to sit down with that organization. So got through last night at their dinner at 10:30, and then threw my wife in the bed, and then threw her in the car this morning. So I'm glad to be here safely. Last year, I was summer. I got a call from Governor Kemp after I guess it was about to become my 2nd year in the State House. He asked me to be his floor leader. So being a governor's floor leader, you're limited on what legislation that you can carry. But he loaded me down with some legislation. The Unmasked Our Children bill is important. I want to talk about it. Greg talked about and Todd talked about a lot of the stats on it. But you take that bill to committee and you deal with the other side sometimes and what they say and their ideas of what masks are protecting our children. It's unbelievable what you go through. And the team that I put together for when I carried that on the House floor, I couldn't say enough about them. Mine was the easy part, was presenting the bill. But then I had a little young lady named Katie Dempsey who's big into our children in our state. She did one of the bills was for autistic children this year that was to help our autistic children around our state. And so she got up and talked kind of from the mother perspective. And then I had another female, Beth Camp, who sits in front of me. She kind of came from it from a school board perspective because she's a former school board member. And then the brainchild came in and he laid it out there. And I mean, it was so much stats that he put together on why we should take these masks off our children. When he went back to his seat, one of our radical Democrats grabbed his paperwork out of his hand and said, "That's all a lie." I mean, just ripped him out of his hand. Todd's a better man than me. And so, that's kind of what we deal with down there. Another bill that I carried for the governor was House Bill 1216, which was his law enforcement package. It is something that's going to help law enforcement around the state and protect every one of you in the state. I mean, Sherry voted against it. I don't know why, but she did. And but it was something that passed very strong in our Republican Party. And then another bill that I carried was I got it through committee, was the reduction of the gas tax, putting that on pause, and then the governor just extended that to July 24th. So that's important for your pocketbooks. And a lot of us can go to the gas pump and fill our trucks up, but we look over to the next gas pump, people are putting just $10 in it. Mm-hmm. So it's important. And people talk about, I've read some stuff about the revenues. Yeah, we lose about $147 million a month, but we have the reserves. Todd's done a great job in appropriations, being a chairman of a subcommittee, but there's a big package in the appropriations that they all work on. And so we do have the reserves to get us through this time.
Thank you all very much. Before I get to the next question, I saw Sheriff Freeman, you snuck in right after I introduced our elected officials. I just want to say hello. And if y'all may not know all the things that go on, I like to say that Sheriff Freeman's a friend of mine, but I had another friend of mine call me the other day and said, servant leadership is alive in Forsyth County. I just went through an accident and Sheriff Freeman was directing traffic. So great job. Yeah.
Since he's here, I want to take this opportunity to share one thing. We had a bill come through the Senate that then was actually added to the 1013 bill that Todd talked about. But it's a cool Forsyth County story. So if I can, I'll just unpack it for a quick second. The Sheriff's Office got federal funding to have one of 2 co-responder units in the state of Georgia. And what a co-responder unit is, and the sheriff will tell you this, a lot of the calls that they get aren't, laws if somebody creating some crazy crime. It's usually somebody struggling with some sort of mental health issue. And so the Coresponder Unit sends a mental health professional along with the deputy to the scene to best assess the way to deal with what's happening. The sheriff and his team came down to the HHS committee, which I'm the secretary of, to testify on that bill. It was really a pleasure to watch them unpack for the committee the success that has been in Forsyth County. Forsyth County and Savannah are the two areas in Georgia where this is currently happening. And it was really a pathway and program for us to look at and say, wow, that's a success here. We're going to go ahead and roll that out statewide. What was happening here in Forsyth County became the model for this Coresponder Unit to get rolled out statewide. So thank you for leading here in that way and giving us something that we could talk about at the Capitol as well.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, on to our next question. So now we're just going to take the first two answers moving forward. So what are the primary legislative issues that didn't get picked up this last session that you expect to come back next session?
Ma'am? I think the number one issue, is it working? Okay. I think the number one issue that we'll see coming back up is school choice. And I think it's about time that Georgia had more school choice. One of the things that we've had to fight was not only the mask mandates, but some of the divisive concepts that are in our schools. And if you notice now, even the federal government is trying to link the payment of school lunches to whether or not the schools are teaching some of the transgender kind of agenda, where boys don't even know if they're boys anymore and girls don't even know if they're girls anymore. And if they're not buying into the agenda, then you won't be able to get the money that you need in order to pay for the lunches. How many schools in Georgia can afford to not receive the federal dollars for the lunches? So we have hundreds of thousands of Georgia students trapped in failing schools. It's unconscionable. We can no longer have that. We must get them out of these failing schools. Parents need to be the ones in charge. They should not be thrown out of school board meetings when they are having a discussion. These are the kinds of things that competition in a business environment, we all know that competition makes us better. So that's what we need to do for schools. And I believe that will be coming back. I don't know exactly what it will look like. We expanded the education scholarships. But now we need to look at how do we help parents get the absolute best education opportunities for their children.
You want me to go? Go ahead. Yeah, I think the one that I'd like to see is effectively disarming the idea of Medicaid expansion. There's 100 reasons why you don't want to expand Medicaid. The Republicans, we have put up an option where instead of affecting about 500,000 Georgians, and that's Stacey Abrams' estimate in terms of who would be impacted by Medicaid expansion, we have a system that we believe will impact 2 million without raising your taxes and not taking ACA away as an option for those 2 million people. So I think that's something that we'll see next year.
You're for and trade.
All right. So the legislature passed a needs-based college tuition grant program. The legislation was signed by the governor. How is this different than HOPE?
Want that one?
We passed a completion scholarship grant. It's actually pretty interesting. So it requires, it's only eligible for folks that have need and that have also completed 80% of their coursework in their postgraduate or their post K-12 education. And it's a $2,500 a year scholarship. So it's really fundamentally different from HOPE to directly answer the question. Obviously, we all know what HOPE does. What we see is a lot of people get close to the finish line and they don't have the financial resources to get across the finish line. And then, we looked at that basically from the, you can do the math and say, well, why should the state pay for something like that? And do the math and say the money that these people will earn and pay in state income tax over the course of their lifetime with the completion will be, somebody did the math, it's an 8-fold ROI for the state to make that investment into these students' lives. But also it helps them just become more productive members of society and pursue their dreams. So it's a different thing than the HOPE, but it was, again, 80% completion. So we see a lot of students, frankly, at UNG that we think will be eligible for this, and then they would get up to a $2,500 a year grant to get them across the finish line.
Okay. And just for the decision making on that, there's a committee in the state, a commission that these students apply and it goes before. So that's how it's decided. Just a little stat: West Forsyth is the largest dual enrollment high school in our county. So we just got the expansion money for North Georgia University, got $11 million this year. And last year we got $1 million. And so that expansion, I mean, again, this is another bill. This is House. I was the third signer on this House Bill 1435 that Sherry also voted against, and I don't know why.
All right. Maybe some of y'all are qualified to talk about this. There were several bills that introduced in the past session regarding regulations governing electric vehicle charging stations. What is the challenge of getting the electric vehicle charging infrastructure in place? I don't know why I'm looking at you, Todd.
Me or you? You want to
Go
take
ahead.
first? No, why don't you want to go first, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, talking unpack it more. I drove an electric car for 8 years, from 2013 to 2021, and I had really good timing on going from an electric car to an 8-cylinder gasoline car about 9 months ago. So I timed that one completely wrong. You know, there's a lot of effort, as there usually is. You see these kind of changes being made and what consumers want to do, and often the first answer is, what's the government going to do about it? But I can tell you, as a really early adopter, and having had 3 separate electric cars over those 8 years, the infrastructure is actually really, really good. So I saw somebody post this week online talking about how, you know, Americans aren't ready to shift to electric cars. Well, some aren't. And for those of us that have, and just make that choice, I can tell you that I had very, very, very little problem with mobility. And my first electric car, by the way, was a Nissan Leaf that had an 85-mile range. Went to a Tesla Model 3 after that, 300-mile range, and it was a game changer. But even on the 85-mile range, I could commute to the Capitol and back because there's a charging station. There's charging stations all over downtown. So I think that what we're going to see is more and more car companies adopt electric vehicles, is they're going to figure this out. And they're in the process of figuring out. Tesla's supercharger network is really it's not the 8th wonder of the world, but it's pretty close to what they've done around the supercharging network, and thinking about the fact that you can go to Lenox Mall and in 20 minutes charge 220 miles worth of charge while you're in grabbing a bite to eat and come back out. We're going to continue to see more and more of this elsewhere. On the legislative side, there's certainly things that we can unpack with that. Georgia it was kind of a crazy tax incentive that we had. I remember, like in 2015, it seemed like everybody was driving a Nissan Leaf. And the reason for that is we basically had this really, it's a crazy tax incentive that made the car free to lease it, because we had it applied to lease it. Todd has a bill that he's working on to bring it back in a more, I guess, rational way is a good way to say it. So with that, I'll hand that off to you.
Thank you for calling it rational. A couple of things you want to just be thinking about. It's too long, and I'm happy to have the conversation offline. First and foremost, know this: nearly every OEM has said, some of them as early as 2025, some of them as late as 2030, but everyone has said at some point they're leaving pure ICE, which are internal combustion engines. So that means by some of them in 2025, that's like Volvo, for instance, they've said there will be no more ICE engines coming out of Volvo. Mercedes has said they've already stopped all the designs of all future ICE engines. So that means they're going to go pure hybrid or pure electric. So at the end of the day, if we look at what our lease law has done. For those of you who don't know, we changed the lease law about 3 or 4 years ago. Prior to that lease law, we had one of the lowest leasing percentages in the entire Southeast, somewhere around 20%. We're climbing up to around 40%. We expect it to get around 50% like Florida and Tennessee. Why is that important? Because you're going to see a flip of the cars. Literally about every 36 months, you're going to see new cars coming online, which means less and less pure ICE and more hybrid. The second thing you need to be thinking about is how our infrastructure was even put together. When you think about our infrastructure and our grid was put together as a centralized grid, not as a decentralized grid. And then if you think about how much we put to each house, how much is allocated per se within your HOA or within the road that you live on. I'm telling you right now, we didn't allocate enough to have everyone have a supercharger within their home and not take down the centralized grid. I know Georgia Power is here and they'll talk to you all about that if you'd like. So I think at the end of the day, we need to think about what we need to do on the grid. What does new construction need to look like? How does a decentralized grid look like? And what can we be using in order to really leverage batteries? And we can go into that conversation too, but batteries are going to be the game changer in terms of being able to capture maybe wind power, solar power, hydro, you name it, and be able to quote, hold it for enough time that you'd be able to move that out. I think the next thing that we need to be looking at is how is it that we can play nice in the sandbox? Not going to name any names, but certain convenience stores want to be able to offer, I'm just going to say charging on, I'm going to call it, $3.99 per hour, or they want to be able to provide it at a certain rate for a certain time. Believe it or not, Georgia statute does not allow that to occur. So our laws are so antiquated, we need to bring it up to speed so that they're not just quote leasing the space, but rather it allows them to quote sell it as electric power on a per se. You buy gas at $2.99, $3.99, pretty soon $7.99. But at the end of the day, you do buy it at a consistent rate across all the states. So I think that's something that we need to be looking at. Finally, may it be racetrack, speedway, and independent, you name it, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to pick on any one of them, and I'm not going to pick on Georgia Power or the EMCs. But the fact of the matter is we need to come up with a wholesale system that's fair to everybody. Right now, the end user, meaning in this case, racetrack or the convenience stores, they got to be able to have a rate from, in a sense, their supplier that they know is consistent and will allow them, just like they do with gasoline today, they have a good understanding about what that gas is. Obviously, they know how much they paid for it and what their profit margin can be. They can't have, I'm just going to say, an irregular wholesale price, because then that makes it almost impossible to be able to price out to the public, because the public needs to have confidence in terms of what it is that they're buying, how much they're buying, etc. So there's a series of different things that's going to have to occur in order for us to make this transformation. Sorry for literally the long bulleted list, but happy to go through any detail offline. So thanks.
1 second.
Oh, sorry.
No, just 2-second comment. This is a bit Convenience Store Association. This is huge. It's a big topic, because we always kid between the Senate and the House. We passed something out of the House to deal with a little bit of this and send it to the Senate, and they messed it up. But no, the good part out of all this is there's a study committee this summer that's going to be, I mean, it's going to be all hands on deck. The 1973 Territorial Rights Act does not allow you to resell electricity. So that's basically, I mean, that's when you talk about antiquated legislation that goes back to 1973. So you got your MEAGs, your EMCs, your Georgia Power, and they all were given territories around our state. And so that's what we're going to deal with. And the topics of how, where charging stations, where they're going to put them, and about the reselling of electricity. When my dad got his boat out at Corral, he was getting his bill, and he was looking at the kilowatts, and everything was very elevated. And he found out that they were reselling electricity to the homeowner or the boats at Corral. So he kind of called up with some friends here at the EMC, and it got fixed. So that's a big deal, the Territorial Rights Act.
Todd, hang on. I have a question that's not here that I want to tag on that. So, because I'm not an electric vehicle guy yet, I'm sure I will be. Currently diesel guy. Anyhow, those charging stations, are they universal across all brands? Like, is that, or is it like just manufacturer uses this kind of plug and this one uses, like if you go to Halcyon, there's a bank of those. Can anybody?
So you have a VHS Betamax, for those of us old enough to remember that. Okay. I'll just say that, but a vast majority are on one standard. I mean, a vast majority. And then you have Tesla and just one or two others that I'm just going to say decided to go the Betamax route. I'm not sure who's going to win that route. The good news is there is an adapter. So if you have a Tesla, there's an adapter so that you can go into, I'll say, the VHS model.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thank you. I've always wondered about that. Because I can tell you, I've not been able to fit it into my F-250.
I don't think I'd want to.
All right, so moving on, what is the biggest challenge to our community currently and in the next 5 years that y'all are doing?
Biggest challenge in our community.
The commissioners are here.
Yeah.
I think that obviously we're, to say that what's our biggest challenge, I think that I want to press pause on that first and say we live in an incredible community and we're blessed in so many ways. And with that blessing, obviously comes the desire for other people that aspire to have what we have, right? And so we all know that the growth presents opportunities and challenges. My wife grew up here and can obviously tell you that this probably wasn't a place 30 years ago that everybody who lives here today would want to live here 30 years ago, because there wasn't a, pick your thing, a Home Depot, a restaurant, or whatever. So with the growth comes challenge. Obviously, the transportation issue has been significant and will continue to be significant. We've moved the needle significantly in the budget. We have really if you take a 10-year trend line, 5 years ago, looking into the next 5 years, have over $1 billion of state investment in Forsyth County. And in road infrastructure, I want to put that into perspective. GDOT's budget's a little bit over $3 billion a year to go to 159 counties. And so for us in a 10-year trend to have $1 billion being invested here by the state is significant. Some of that happened, probably before all of us except Sherry were in office, and happen after, continue to happen after all of us are out of office. That's not us patting ourselves in the back, but this is work that we're doing at the Capitol to ensure that we unlock traffic gridlock, everything from, south of the McGinnis area interchange. My first year I was in office, we really had to broker a deal, and Commissioner Laura Swanson, I believe, was chair at the time. And Alpharetta was a holdout. They didn't want the widening done. So she and her fellow commissioners worked on brokering that deal with Rudy Bones. What I'm trying to tell you is this is a team sport, right? So McGinnis Ferry widening and McGinnis Ferry interchange all the way up to 369 interchange. Commissioner Rose, that would be very significant for your area. And you helped us work on that as well. Post Road widening and Commissioner Events District just got funded this year. Alfred, I don't want to leave you out, but there's something I'm sure that we've done in your district recently as well. But traffic gridlock continues to be something that we need to address. And I want to talk about the federal project, which is the two things. One is the 285 interchange that we've done, they tell us by the end of this year again. But that was $1 billion project. So again, a project, $1 billion. So these things are getting more and more expensive. There's an asphalt shortage, and so we're seeing price increases across the board. But the 400 express lanes are coming. They're coming from the perimeter up to McFarland. And that's a federal project. If y'all remember, Secretary Chow a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, visited Forsyth County under the Trump administration, and Congressman Woodall had done work getting that done. So that's going to give an option. What was interesting was when we saw the express lanes put in other areas of the state, they called them Lexus lanes, right? So all of us that maybe couldn't afford to drive in a grumble, it's just going to be people that can afford it. What they actually saw was that when these lanes opened, it decreased commute times in the non-pay lanes by 40%. So you're opening up congestion. Yes, some people have to pay to get the fastest experience, but you'll still get a faster experience. And so I think that's important when you think about the timing of that with the 285 interchange, because ultimately what we're doing is we're just getting people onto 400 faster, right? So you're taking that backup off of 285, getting onto 400 faster. So we have thought about local, state, and federal elected officials, once those cars get up this way faster, how do we deal with them? So I think the other thing, honestly, and we're seeing this happen with the growth side, is this isn't a challenge necessarily, but the workforce challenge has come to Forsyth County as the chamber and all of us have been successful in bringing more industry here. We are having the challenge of getting workers to do the work that we need to get done here, whether it's high tech or low tech. We're seeing that across the board. So it's a form and function of COVID, but quite frankly, we're getting a lot of headwinds from the White House. Fuel prices, I'm afraid, might break the back of this economy. And so that's, I look forward to the next 5 years. Jamie Dimon came out last week. Y'all know who Jamie Dimon is, said that we're preparing for a hurricane. And he said, we don't know whether it's going to be a Cat 1 or a Cat 5, but we are preparing for a hurricane. When Jamie Dimon says to prepare for a hurricane, and 5 days later, Elon Musk says we're probably going to lay off 10% of our workforce, the economy is first and foremost in my mind. The state is doing fine. We're running, Lauren mentioned $147 million a month that we are backfilling for the gas tax in the general fund. The state is currently running $8 billion ahead year over year budget from last year. And to give you an idea of how much money that is, our budget's $30 billion. So for us to be running $8 billion ahead of a $30 billion budget is significant, and it means that we made the right choice. And frankly, Governor Kemp made the right choice, staring down all the doomsayers and naysayers, and we kept the state open for business.
Something is of course important to everybody is the infrastructure. As the senator talked about, 285. That's, even though it's not in our county, that is an investment for Forsythians, because a lot of us somehow, some way go through Atlanta West Airport or go to work. So I consider that an investment in our county and our transportation infrastructure, even though it's not here. Total investment in our county this past session was a little over $100 million by the governor. So another investment was the 32.6 that we got for the discharge back into the lake of clean water. It's cleaner water that came out of the lake. And the reason we were already discharging into Chattahoochee, but getting it back into Lake Lanier gives us credits so that we can just have intake of more water. So that's something that our commissioners are working with the state. There's going to be other monies out there. I didn't let Trey Kilpatrick even pass my desk. I'm in a office where I'm in the policy office at the Capitol down in the dungeon. And he would come down there all the time, and I'd always say, Post Road, 64 million. And we finally got it. I mean, that was important for West Forsyth is getting that expansion. And of course, I already talked about North Georgia, and that's for education for our kids. So a little over 100 million in our county just this session that we all worked on to get.
All right, we realized post-COVID how global commerce really disrupted the supply chain. Y'all see this getting any better?
Not in the short term. Oh,
Go ahead.
that is the question.
The
In the short term, it's going to take a while. We took a rip-roaring economy and slammed it shut. And so it takes a long time to come back. I do want to say, everybody up here working very closely with our chamber members, we were able to weather this storm much better than a lot of communities. I want to thank the innovation of encouraging people to purchase restaurant cards, even if the restaurant was closed. I remember that was something that we worked very hard on. And I was so pleased that this community came together the way it did. But like I said, we had to work together, and now we must continue that work together. So what's it going to take? When you slam the economy and now people have been out of work and they're accustomed to being home or in their PJs or only having to dress from the top, because nobody will ever see that I'm still in my underwear if I'm just on screen, right? As long as I don't stand up. We have now a new dynamic in what people are expecting out of work. So we must stop the incentives of encouraging people to stay out of work, which means, I don't know if anybody is aware of this. In 2008, when we had the Great Recession, Congress extended the benefits for unemployment. And at that time, we had a 66% participation rate, and we went down to 63%. We were just beginning to come out of that when we slammed the economy. So it takes a long time. That's from 2008 to 2020. That's what it took to bring back our participation rate. And the Great Recession did not slam it the way that COVID did. So we all have to be innovative. We have to figure out how do we get people back to work when they, like I said, become accustomed to staying home and not work. I mean, it's one thing to work from home. It's another thing to stay home. We've got to find that incentive, that internal incentive to go back to work. So yeah, it's going to take a while. It will recover. How long? I don't know. And if anybody else has any ideas on how long, that'd be great. I'll pass it off.
I'm not going to get into geopolitical aspects of all of this. We have a company, for instance, that we needed about 50,000 chips. And of course, China is the first place that you thought of pre-COVID. Taiwan's been smart enough to basically take a more, I'll say, aggressive approach to COVID. And now Taiwan has found a way to be able to do what China was doing. I think you're going to see more with NAFTA. You're going to see more with Canada, the United States, and Mexico doing a little bit more. And I think that's exciting. I think the pivot that hopefully we will see more of is accretive manufacturing or 3D printing. We saw that 3D printing pre-COVID was in a nascent stage. We saw then, based purely on desperation, that there was this need to really get into 3D printing and accretive manufacturing, especially remember when the first protocol was ventilators, and then suddenly there were no ventilators and now they started to 3D print them. I think coming out of COVID, that's one of the things that we're seeing more of at our office now. We have 2 3D printers that we didn't have before, and we're seeing more and more of our partners, both downstream and upstream, using accretive manufacturing. So I think if there's one thing that comes out of this, I'd love to be able to say that our country takes the lead on accretive manufacturing and 3D printing, because I do think that that's where we need to be going to, as Gretzky said, skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it's at.
So I've heard of 3D printing referred to as additive manufacturing. Are you saying creative?
Accretive.
Accretive.
Or additive.
It's the same thing. Okay, cool. I'm learning here. So, oh, by the way, we offered an incentive, no pants Wednesdays. To try to It didn't work out. It didn't work out. I don't recommend it.
On a serious note, guys, real quick, every morning, pretty much about 3 days a week, Todd and I learned coffee in the morning. I don't need that. I learn new words every morning we meet and have coffee. I mean, so you're getting to learn this accretive and creative and all this. It's a lot of stuff up there.
It's my responsibility to help him with his SAT. Yeah.
All right. So there was a bill passed this past session. You already touched on it a little bit, but here's your chance to really unpack it. It overhauled the state's approach to mental health care delivery. Please give us a layman's overview of what that legislation does to address mental health in new ways.
You might as well.
75 pages, and I'll do it in 60 seconds. Section 1 basically said there's going to be parity between physical insurance and mental insurance, which means no more can you have unlimited visits to your oncologist, unlimited visits to your orthopedic surgeon, but limited on mental health. I don't want to get into all the statistics, but I can assure you between mental health and substance abuse, 80% of the families in Georgia are affected by it. So we were affecting 80% of the families by saying you can only go to 12 psychiatry visits, but unlimited oncology visits. By the way, if you have cancer, I want you to go to those visits, just like if you have a mental health disease or substance abuse, I want you to do that. The second part of the bill, Section 2, is effectively a way that we told our Medicaid vendors. So we spend about $12 billion a year in Medicaid. We outsourced to 3 different companies, and they were spending about 82 cents on every dollar for direct patient care. That minimum now is 85 cents. Now we expect them, because we wrote the bill in such a way that they could go higher during the bid process. We expect them next year when they bid, we expect them to actually go a little bit higher than that. That would put us, just so you know, in the midpoint of the Southeast states. We wanted to go a little bit higher, but we felt, let's see if we can get them at least up, because right now we're 13th out of 13 when you go by the Southeast states. The third part of the bill was around assisted outpatient therapy. For those of you who've ever had a child, a loved one, go through what I call the cycle. My oldest son has gone through it 31 times. You're acute for 5 to 7 days. They basically give you enough medication where Secretariat couldn't run around a racetrack. Then they drop you down for 30 days, and then they pat you on the back, hand you 5 days of meds and say, good luck. That's effectively the cycle. And I can assure you it doesn't work. So we effectively put in what's called AOT, assisted outpatient therapy. So when you start doing that drop down, now you drop down to AOT, or assisted outpatient therapy. Fourth was the co-responder model. Greg already talked about that. Sheriff Freeman, kudos to you. And I want to thank the sheriff. He came down for me twice. He came down not for the House, and he came down for the Senate. So I appreciate him doing that for us. And then the rest of 5 and rest of 6 talks about setting up an accountability court. For those of you who don't know, that really sets up an arm to our court system. Today, we have several other accountability courts statewide. This puts an accountability court there. And then it provided for an extension of the Mental Health Commission, which Kevin Tanner, our county manager, chairs, and that extended it to, I believe, 2025, and then put in a series of different reports. Last but not least, it put authorization around a federal law. The federal law in 2008 signed by W effectively said parity was the law of the land. We never affected it, meaning we never gave an enforcement power to any agency. We did that this time, and now there's an enforcement power. So now every insurance company will have to answer for their actions during the previous year. In addition to, we changed the definition in such a way that no longer does the insurance company have last say. How many of you have ever heard your doctor say you need X? The insurance company comes back and says, no, you don't, or we're going to do something other than X. That doesn't happen now with this. You effectively have the patient and the doctor as the last say versus the insurance company. Okay, 1 minute and 15.
Awesome.
All right, let's take a moment, give them a break, come back to y'all. It's time for the interactive part. So get your phones out. If you didn't do it to start with, here you go. Text James McCoy 350 to 22333. Here is the question that we're going to ask you. What issues do you think will define the 2023 legislative session? That's what I want you to put in there.
Oh, okay.
We got economy.
Mhm.
Okay, that's it. Economy.
Economy's stupid. Yeah, well, it's the economy, stupid.
We got gas, we got education, jobs, shortages,
I'd fall asleep.
health.
You see it? Okay. Okay. Grab one of those blankets.
So if I get behind it, I can
It's
maybe,
hard to read.
I think
Not
if you
like the
get
books
behind
that
it,
I
you
was
can read
taught
it back.
left to right. I gotta start up and down. All right. All right, so the biggest one on here is economy. Let me get over here where I can read. So we got the biggest one from the audience is economy. We got inflation, health, education. Is choice a word all by itself, or is that attached to something else?
School
I don't
choice.
know what we're, some kind of choice. What's that? School choice? Okay, it's separated those two words. Yeah, economy and education seem to be the biggest ones. So, back to the delegation, anything I said, which of any of the things that I read off of there, will you be any of you be championing next session? I'll read them again. But they're gone. Biggest one was economy.
I mean,
Anybody?
You want-
well, you're on appropriations. Do you want to take the economy?
I'll take, well,
Or do you want to take education? Which do you want?
I'll just say, okay.
Okay.
I'm the chairman of the subcommittee of K-12 appropriations. It's a small little committee that handles about $14 billion of your money. And so one of the things that I've been really interested in watching is there's a few states that are now passing law where the money follows the student and the money does not follow the entity. That's been really interesting because now suddenly well, it wouldn't be the whole 14 billion, but a big part of that 14 billion becomes fungible. And what does that mean in terms of, to Sherry's point a couple minutes ago, around competition? So we're going to keep our eye on that to see exactly how the other states, when they pass, how they pass, effective date, and what it does in terms of their system. We know, and those of you who've been here at past legislative breakfasts, look, the number one predictor of a child's academic success is the mother's education level. We have to break that correlation. If we don't, we will continue to have it where, and I'm putting quotes, oh, well, East Cobb has good education, Forsyth has good education, Cherokee has good education. You might as well say East Cobb, Cherokee, and Forsyth have educated moms. Okay, that's a correlation we must break. And if we do not break that correlation, I'm sorry, we could literally triple the K-12 funding out of the state and triple your property taxes, just kidding. And suddenly you still would not see a difference in outcomes. I will literally guarantee you that. APS spends almost $18,000 per child. We spend less than half of that here, yet the outcomes in Forsyth County are much higher than APS. I'm not putting the APS teachers down or the staff down. That's not what I'm trying to say here, but we need to acknowledge what is. So would the money following the student provide for the opportunity for the parent to put them into the position to succeed where they think they will succeed the best? And going back to what Greg said about the Parents' Bill of Rights, which I think, did you carry that? I can't remember. Okay. It was one of the governor's bills, but in terms of having the parent as the last say, in terms of the economy, I think all four of us are pretty much on the same page. It's not our job to get in the middle of the economy. Our job is actually get out of your way, deregulate you, give you the opportunity to have the entrepreneurial spirit win, and then at the end of the day, move across. The misclassification bill, that was just about making the field level. It wasn't about giving anyone an advantage. And I think that's how we see our role in the economy. Make sure the field's level, pull back and watch you guys do your thing.
And one of the things that we also need to think about in the economy and getting out and creating that level playing field is making sure that inducements like the film tax credit doesn't just take one industry and give them a benefit that nobody else can have access to. We need to be looking at what we have done. Yeah, it's brought a lot of filming to Georgia, but what has it done cost other businesses, other individuals in order to provide such a lucrative incentive to bring in one industry that other industries had no opportunity to play in. So that's part of that level the playing field, deregulation, making sure that any incentive that I have, everybody can have an opportunity to weigh in on that. So that's what I think we need to be looking at in our economy.
I'll just touch on one last thing on the economy. The thing that's getting squeezed the most right now is disposable income among among middle-class families. And we passed this year, really the third income tax cut of the decade, but we're scaling the income tax down over 7 years from 5.75% to 4.99%.
And flat.
And it's gonna be, and we're flattening it as well, as Sherry mentioned. Sherry mentioned the film tax credit, $1.2 billion spent last year. The next highest state is New York with $600 million. We don't have a cap on our Georgia film tax credit. When it first started, it was about 100 million. So for it to scale a little bit over a decade from 100 million to 1.2 billion, to put that in perspective. I know I'm talking fast, sorry. It's about one out of every $7 that you pay in income tax goes to the film studios to subsidize the tax credit. So we need to look at that and determine what's the way to maintain the thriving film industry that we have here. But we don't need to be double the subsidy of any other state to win. We can win still, but return some of that money to the general fund. And so ultimately, all of these things are an attempt to be able to lower the income tax further, because the most significant thing that we can do for the economy is to stabilize and supplement consumer spending. I should say support consumer spending such that the economy we've seen over the last 5 years, which is always consumer driven, remains robust.
Thank you. Let's talk about gas. How does the temporary suspension of the state gasoline tax impact GDOT's long-term major mobility investment program?
Well, let's be quick for you guys. It doesn't. We're backfilling that with money from the general fund, $147 million a month. Because of the health of the estate economy, we're able to backfill that. Did anybody else want to say anything? Or is it?
You want to talk about the air taxis or anything?
Yeah, I think we're running on time.
Okay.
All right, so can you talk about why the ports of Savannah are important to us here in North Georgia and how the ports impact us in ways that most consumers don't realize?
Supply chain. I mean, seriously, we all understand the supply chains, and now we have internal ports as well. So we know that we've got to get the goods into the state and then across the state and then through the state. And you can't do it without a good port. And we're so proud of what we've done in Savannah. And of course, some of that also came from the federal government. Imagine that the federal government helped us after they hurt us. But Port of Savannah, supply chain.
A little geeky stat to take home today. There's 4 key drivers to our GDP here in Georgia: Hartsfield, the port, the military bases, and what I'm just going to call corporation, and then the businesses in terms of our Fortune 500s, et cetera. So if you're asking about one of the 4, you're pretty much going to get, we have to continue to make all 4 of those drive in order for our GDP to continue to ramp into the right direction.
Tell me. Just to unpack the port thing, it's the 4th busiest port in the country. So it's heavily important, which is not only important for our daily lives, it's important for our national security, right? Because food security is ultimately national security. How many of y'all either shop at Target or men, you sit in the car while your wife's shopping at Target? Bring this home a little bit. 2 million square foot facility at the Port of Savannah for Target. How many of y'all have college students need help at some point in time put together IKEA furniture? It's the bane of your existence. 115 acre facility at the Port of Savannah for IKEA distribution center. And perhaps most importantly, how many of you drink Heineken or Amstel? 7 million cases of beer just from Heineken and Amstel come through the Port of Savannah. So literally it touches everything that we do, and it's certainly something that's important. And the deepening of the ports is significant. It's that port of the state.
I appreciate the IKEA flashback. My daughter's moving and I gotta go unput that stuff together now. How's that gonna work? So anyhow, all right, just so y'all know, we've been going for a little over an hour here. We've got about 20 minutes left, so you're almost out of the hot seat. We've recently seen big announcements from 2 car manufacturers, Rivian and Hyundai. These are great announcements, but every manufacturer we talk with is already having a challenge finding employees. What's the plan to find workforce for these companies that isn't predatory and to current Georgia manufacturers? If you know.
Do you want to talk about the car stuff you've been working with the dealerships on? I'll just highlight really quick. There's a program, and you all may not know that this exists. I didn't know that it exists, quite frankly, before I got into General Assembly. It's either 13 or 17, I forget, but the state has identified either 13 or 17 high-need career paths, and they are funding technical education for those high-need career paths. Some of them are healthcare, some of them are manufacturing, some of them are in the services industry. So that's one investment that we've made that we will obviously continue to make. And I know Lauren has actually been kind of connecting. You can talk about after you met with GADA, the meeting you had with Forsyth Central.
Our car manufacturers, I mean, they have strong needs with technology that's going on in our cars, as we've all heard with Rivian coming and Hyundai. There's a huge need for people to fix the cars, but there's also an educational side, and that's getting the car manufacturers and our technical schools together. And even further than that, our car manufacturers now are focusing on our high school kids, even though Forsyth Central has a great auto shop, and I mean, they either get first or second in the nation every year. The huge investment in education there, and we went to a demonstration there that it was phenomenal to see these kids at this young age. They took an engine apart in less than 5 minutes and then turned around and put it back together. But engines are changing, so they're trying to get these young folks to understand how to get in the technical side, and Forsyth Central is doing that. Labor shortage is of course something that's been huge in our state, and I think the message was pretty resounding with our new labor commissioner, or hopefully labor commissioner Bruce Thompson, because the former labor commissioner decided not to run, because that was a huge issue for us during COVID. I got calls constantly, where's my money, where's my food stamps, and it was almost obnoxious, because we could not get in touch with anybody in the labor department. They were at McDonald's spending that $1 million that out of their budget to eat lunch. But the great part about it, even the number 2 man in the labor department, he ran for labor commissioner, and Bruce beat him. So hopefully there's going to be some help coming for our labor shortage. I mean, I think we are about 2.9, somewhere around there. It's where we are, which is great, but it's still an issue, and we've got to figure that out. I think with our governors driving with, Georgia, always the best state to do business. We're going to continue that, but we got to let people know it's a great place to live, and leave your politics in California or New York.
Are there, while we're talking on this labor, are there conversations happening downtown about overall workforce issues, not just automotive, but I mean, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is two things. One is, what can we do to help, I'm going to say, the non-traditional, meaning a person who's already passed, shall say, the traditional high school GED, they're maybe in their mid-20s. The challenge is it could be a single mom with a kid or 2 kids. It's one thing to give them free tuition. It's another thing to get them childcare and transportation. So the question has to become, is that the government's role to do that? Or is that a charitable role to do that? How is it that we help that mom get that, I'll say, certification that literally moves her from here to here, skill set wise, that allows her to address some of the key needs we have, yet at the same time, she can't if we don't provide for, or if someone does not provide for the childcare and the transportation. So the question becomes is 9 months of an investment there worth having this person have independence, quote, the rest of their life, and hopefully they stay in Georgia. So there's a lot of different conversations like that going on. I think the second one is, and I've mentioned this before, I think I'll say pre-COVID, is we have to stop this idea that if your child doesn't go to a higher education, meaning I'm saying a 4-year university, for some unknown reason, that's considered to be, oh, they failed, or they didn't get where they should have gone to. There's a lot of great things happening with our technical colleges. And frankly, the entrepreneurial rate coming out of those are higher than the entrepreneurial rate even out of Georgia Tech or University of Georgia. So why not go ahead and encourage them if they want to become someone who uses their hands a lot and go into that? That's something that we need to do, but that's a cultural thing that the government isn't going to change, but rather we have to change. And we really need to press that upon each one of the families. Every child has their own path to take, military, technical college, or higher ed. As long as they take one of those 3 paths, that's awesome. We just don't want them to stop at high school or a GED. We want them to go to one of those 3.
I didn't take any of those paths. I stopped at high school, but I'm up here in front of y'all today, so I don't know what that means. Let's see. This is the last question. We're going to take some questions from y'all today. This is the last pre-submitted question. In the 2021 General Assembly, new legislation was passed that addresses integrity in the state's elections. It made national news. This past this past primary was the first test of those changes. How do you think the new processes went? And will those processes hold up for what is expected to be a record turnout for the general election this fall?
So voter suppression is a lie. I think we've proved that. And the only real hiccup, of course, everybody has probably seen what happened in DeKalb County. If you were to talk with our elections officials, if you were to talk with people from the Secretary of State's office, you would find out it was a terrible, horrible human mistake in DeKalb County, but that was not systemic. And we here in Forsyth County had an incredibly well-run election. I just wish that the numbers came out a little bit before 10:30 at night when they began. But other than that, we have proven that what we did in Senate Bill 202 made a lot of differences, and people were able to vote. There was no suppression, and people were able to have their voice heard. It was accurately counted. That's what we were able to do. Did you?
Just to put some numbers on that, when we passed Senate Bill 202, the tagline that kind of came out around that was that the goal was to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And I heard it so much that it kind of started to feel like a corny tagline that we were all saying. But the data shows, the applicable election to compare this to is not the 2020 election, it's the 2018 election, last time that we were in a gubernatorial primary cycle, right? And the numbers are up 70%, turnout numbers up 70% over the 2018. So we literally, Georgia has been, since I have been, I tell everybody, like, how do you like the job? Like, it's the craziest time to be involved in Georgia politics, right? Because my freshman year, we passed the heartbeat bill, then we have the hate crimes legislation, and then we have the voter bills. We have these significant and controversial bills that seemingly come up every single year. And oftentimes it seems like the rest of the country wants to weigh in on what we're doing here in Georgia. I mean, our election bill was, caused us to lose, well, the response from the other side on our election bill and the feigned and faux outrage caused us to lose the All-Star game. It caused us to become the subject of late night fodder on television. And we had the President of the United States telling us that this was Jim Crow 2.0. And I'm waiting for one of them to apologize.
Yeah.
Because what they said about this state and what they said about our efforts is shameful and wrong, and now it's been proven demonstrably wrong. I've been subpoenaed to go before a grand jury or before a panel in a lawsuit because they want to figure out what we talked about behind closed doors, because they just can't believe that we think that it's reasonable that somebody should have an ID to vote.
Right.
So, the challenge that we're up against is it takes 1 second to tell a lie, and it takes about 15 seconds to repeat that lie, and that's the challenge that we're up against. But I mean, even on the Democrat side, where there was no gubernatorial contested primary, there wasn't a senatorial contested primary. 4 years ago, 550,000 people voted on the Democrat side. This year, under Jim Crow 2.0, according to President Biden, over 150,000 more people somehow managed to vote. So I get a little emotional about this and frustrated about this because I have watched repeatedly our efforts at the Capitol get mischaracterized by the media. And when you sit down with reasonable people and explain to them what you actually did, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe you shouldn't have drop boxes outside 24/7 aren't monitored. Maybe you shouldn't have 6.9 million absentee ballot request forms sent out without anybody asking for them with a first class stamp, so that if somebody's moved, they get sent to them out of state. A lot of the things that we did were just really mischaracterized. I'm sorry for taking an extra minute on this, but I want to tell you all that the voting system that we have, the changes that we made in Senate Bill 202 did exactly what that corny tagline said. It did, in fact, make it easier to vote, and it did, in fact, make it harder to cheat.
So we've got a few minutes left here, and I've got questions submitted from the floor. So we'll do a few of these. We won't be able to get to all of them, I'm sure, but we'll get to a couple. Why is T-Splost important, and how can you help to ensure that it passes?
I'm not going to touch it.
Either one of those.
I won't get into specifics of maybe this T-Splosh. I haven't had a chance to fully unpack the project list, and I know we're still gonna have meetings with the county manager and the commissioners about this. But I will say that when you think about how you tax people, usage taxes and consumption taxes are preferable to either property taxes or income taxes. And so for me personally, taking and zooming out from a macro level, I don't want to have any income tax at all in the state because I don't want to tax labor. I think a consumption tax is a far more fair way to do it. So whether it's the current state's gas tax, whether it's a T-Splosh, whether it's an E-Splosh, one thing to think about is the fact that everybody who uses services here in Forsyth County that relate to that activity pay for it. In fact, some people who don't even take advantage of those services, pay for them. So we've been talking about transportation for a long time. The chamber took the lead with the commissioners on the transportation law in 2014. We saw what was accomplished through that effort. And I think that we need to have an all of the above approach when we analyze and look at what the best options are for funding sources. And so I look forward to continue to unpack that, commissioners, with all of you, and Kevin Tanner's here with him as well. Give me a microphone, I'll just talk. One thing that we do know is that the counties who bring money to the table to help with projects are the counties that are getting funding under GDOT. Lieutenant Governor Duncan, when the current GDOT planning director was first appointed by Governor Kemp, Lieutenant Governor requested a meeting with her, and I was invited to that meeting. And I'll give him credit for this because in that meeting, Lieutenant Governor talked about one project, Post Road. So Janine was in the room, first meeting with Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor begins to unpack Post Road, but in the process of him telling the story about Post Road and talking about how important Post Road is to this community, and allowing myself and Mike Dudgeon, who was in the room, to weigh in on that, he told the story of Forsyth County bringing transportation dollars to the table because she was new. She didn't know that story, so he was able to tell the story of the Georgia 400 widening. He was able to tell the story of some of the other projects that we worked on there. And so, what is great is with the synergy that we have between our local elected officials, with our sheriff, with the delegation, with our GDOT, with Rudy Bowen, who represents us on the GDOT board. Forsyth County is at the table when we're having conversations now, probably in a more significant way than it's ever been at the table before. So I just want you all to be encouraged by the progress that's actively happening.
Along those lines, are there specific reasons that we can't eliminate the state income tax like neighboring states have done?
Who wants to take that? I'll take it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, real quick, before I answer that one, coming off of Greg's question, the question of the day should also be, how do we replace the gas excise tax?
Yeah.
We're probably going to see the peak of the tax, notwithstanding the fact that we've suspended it. The peak of the tax will probably be in about 18 to 24 months, and then you'll start seeing it go down. And that's what our primary funding source is for DOT. We're going to get to the point where we're not going to be getting as much out of the fuel tax for obvious reasons, maybe CAFE standards and raising the mileage requirements, and then the move to hybrid electric like we discussed before. So the question becomes is, intra-Georgia, I think it's easier to determine how it is we would collect from a Georgian in terms of how we collect and basically fund the roads. It really is, I call them Indiana Bob. Indiana Bob in a 1,000-mile Tesla, which will occur by the end of 2030, is literally going to drive from Indiana down to Disney World, pass through our great state, possibly stop for Chick-fil-A, maybe get something else for the kids, but we're not going to pick up even a penny from them on the transportation. Many of us do not like tolls just because it slows us down. So the question becomes is, how do we get interstate funds into our treasury so that we can support our roads? That's something that we're also discussing. Lauren, you talked about the EV study committee. Well, there's also going to be a committee around how is it that we replace the gas tax? And I think that's going to be something important that you guys know that we have a solution for you, not today, but one that, hey, as we see the gas tax go down, you're going to see this kind of flip back in so that we can supplement that so we make sure that our roads are taken care of. And to Greg's point, I think all of us can tell you we believe more in a consumption tax than necessarily hitting the income. Now, to the income tax, there's some pretty interesting things, the way that the state structured itself literally moons ago, way before any of us even came into this earth. And I think at the end of the day, we have such a dependency on the income tax right now, about 50%. And I think what we need to be able to do is
I'd love to be able to see the scale down, go faster down to 4.99 as opposed to 7 years. I'd like to see it go a little bit faster, kind of like when DeSoto burned the boats. It kind of gives you a little more urgency and kind of moves you around to that. But I think the other thing that we need to be thinking about is how can the consumption tax work, but then how can we basically rebate back to the lower income and I'll say the lower middle class? Because we don't want it to be regressive to the point where I'll say someone up here is able to afford that certain thing, and then someone down here, it truly does hit them in a much more adverse way. Our current income tax does not, and the federal income tax does not. So we need to be coming up with solutions in terms of replacing something that today is about 50% of the treasury, and then making sure that we can move that down faster and then bring something up faster around the consumption side, and then rebate back to, I want to say, the folks down here on the socioeconomic ladder. So then that way we have more of an equilibrium for those folks, but at the same time, we took this up in terms of your consumption. And I think that's what we want to be able to tax, is not your productivity, but also your consumption. Well, thank you.
All right, we'll just do one more here. Will you support local control and giving local government in Forsyth County the ability to change the hotel motel taxes in the future to generate more revenue for our community from visitors rather than from our residents?
Yeah, we already did the local legislation in the House. We'll have to do it again for the biennial, but it's already done.
Do you want to talk about the clerk thing that happened?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't fully understand what
I
happened.
kind of talk more than,
Okay, you're good.
yeah.
We'll do
The
it.
long and the short of it is, it's already moved through the House side. We'll have to redo it because of the biennial, but yeah, that's something that's already supported by the delegation. At least I don't want to speak for everyone, but I do. Yeah, we're supporting.
Awesome. Well, that's not the last question then.
That was the Johnny come later, you know, in the right.
Yeah.
That's how it's going out.
Can you explain the tax credit for law enforcement agencies bill that passed? What does that possibly mean for Forsyth County?
So this was a bill that passed the Senate. It was one of Lieutenant Governor Duncan's priorities, called the Less Crime Act. It has the potential, quite frankly, to be one of the most transformational bills that we passed last session that nobody's talking about. It's a $75 million allocation of funding that allows a dollar for dollar tax credit for donations that you would make to a local law enforcement's foundation. So Lieutenant Governor and myself have already met with the sheriff and been in conversation with the rest of the delegation on getting their foundation set up. The interesting thing is that we knew, but we kind of stumbled upon in that meeting, is the city of Cumming is eligible as well. And there is no kind of per capita number. So the city of Cumming is eligible for the same $3 million cap as Forsyth County. The way it works is I believe it's a $5,000, don't quote me on these numbers, but I believe it's $5,000 per, $10,000 actually, per married couple. So I think it's $5,000 per individual, $10,000 per married couple that you can donate to the sheriff's office and then get back dollar for dollar on your Georgia state taxes. In addition to that, S Corps can donate an additional $10,000. And here's where this gets really interesting. C Corps can donate up to 75% of their Georgia tax liability. So you literally could have a Home Depot or Coca-Cola, should they choose, if they now support the police, some of these companies, they can, or should they want to make amends now that the political ties changed, they could donate $3 million to Forsyth County, $3 million to the city of Cumming, $3 million to the city of Atlanta, et cetera. They can use it essentially for they being the local law enforcement offices can use it for anything except salaries. So for example, when we met with the sheriff, he said, when I called and had a conversation with the mayor, they basically said, we could use this to build, the new precinct that we want to build, or the new, police office we want to build in the city. So we are actually going to call on the business community. We have an event that we're planning for the fall. We're calling it the Refund the Police event. And we're going to call on Forsyth County to come to the table with $6 million. And really, we're just asking you to give us $6 million as an interest-free loan for a few months that you'll eventually get back from the state. And we think this is going to be something that we're going to be able to do every year. Here's why we're doing it in the fall. The portal is not open until January. We're going to have all the paperwork ready for you. We're going to have, you're going to know exactly where to go on the day that the portal opens. We're going to have people there to process it because it's first come, first serve. So we're literally going to have everything for you guys ready. So, if you're able to give $1,000 because that's your Georgia income tax liability, great. If you're able to give the full $10,000, great. Maybe you have a C corporation, you want to think about, hey, I want to give $100,000, and we can sit down and have that conversation. We're working right now to put together an information packet. We're working directly with the Department of Revenue to understand the rules and regs because they have authority to promulgate those rules and regs. But that's something that you'll be hearing more about. When we all get back from summer vacation, we'll be hitting everybody up for this Refund the Police event. And we're really, really excited about it. And this is something that's going to live on long past, all of our time in office. And we'll be happy to kind of build the foundation of it moving forward.
Greg mentioned that they can share equipment, so we could buy it once and come in.
Yeah, Todd's mentioning the idea of sharing equipment. Of course, Forsyth County and Sheriff's Office and the City of Cumming Police Department already work very closely together. So there may be a need that the county could take advantage of, that the city may end up purchasing under this plan, that they may have otherwise never been able to purchase. I believe from talking to the mayor that this essentially is, if we get the $3 million to them, that is essentially doubles their budget on an annual basis. And I believe the sheriff budget, Commissioner Levin, is about 60 million. Is that 55, 60 million? 55, 60 million. So the $3 million on top of that for them would, gives them a lot of room to move. So this is directly in response to what we saw happen a few years ago during the peaceful protests. Insert air quotes here. When people were burning down cities in this country and vilifying law enforcement. And we wanted to say as a state that we're going to stand behind law enforcement. We believe the best way to do that is allow you to come behind your law enforcement communities locally. And we think that Forsyth County is going to be the first one to max this thing out. We're excited for it.
Well, thank you all very much. I got a few more questions, but I don't have a few more time. So we're going to end the questions there. I want to thank our delegation for coming out and spending time with us this morning. Thank all of you for coming out and attending today, and we look forward to hosting another session in the winter. Now I'd like to bring Carter back up, and Carter, here he is, and lead us in the four-way test.
All right, thank you, everybody. If you please stand for the four-way test. Four-way test are the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, everybody. Hey, Senator. Yeah.
Which question was yours?
I didn't have one.
Okay.
Wait, you didn't?